Hello everybody and welcome to my annual countdown of my top 10 light novel reads of the past year. This being the year of 2020. Yes, the year that, well, let's be honest, kind of sucked eggs for humanity, but hey, for light novel fans, it was a pretty good year actually. We had a lot of great titles not only get released, but we also had a ton of light novel series be announced for future release, ensuring that 2021 is going to be a really big and busy year light novel wise. We of course had a long sought after series, High School DxD, finally get released in the tail end of 2020, and of course an even probably more requested title in Data Live was licensed last year and is actually set, unless delays it, should be out in February. So lots of big news for light novel fans throughout 2020, lots of great titles available to read, and that's not even counting all the ton of ongoing series that of course contributed to the bankruptcy of our accounts. In any case, these are going to be my top 10 reads that I checked out this year. I'd say overall, if there's a theme to this, it is female protagonists. This year, I really discovered that I absolutely love reading about female main characters. I don't know, I'm not anti-harem or anything like that. I don't want to start any kind of wars about that kind of stuff, but there was something kind of nice about reading with female main characters. There was either a very nice singular romance going on, or there was this real great sense of camaraderie that, I don't know, kind of felt a little different than the dynamic that you get in books where you have a male-centric main character usually surrounded by a harem. If any of the titles that I cover in this video seem like something that's up your alley, I'll have links in the description down below if you want to go and check those out. In the meantime, let's get to the list. In my number 10 spot, this is the only volume that is a later volume in a series. Recently, well actually for quite some time now, I have pretty much focused on just brand new volume number ones so that I can have as much diversity of titles on the channel as possible. But this is one series that I've been reading so long now, and like the home stretch is there, so I've been trying to keep up with it, and that is the Monogatari series by Nishio Ishin. This one, of course, released in English by Vertical. The specific volume that's on the list is Owarimonogatari Part 1. Now, this is the end trilogy of the Monogatari series, and then there is sort of a, I don't know what to call it, a bonus follow-up volume afterwards. I don't know. In any case, this book ended up being one of, if not my favorite title in the Monogatari series so far. There was such a very strong emotional core to it, and it was a lot of fun actually exploring Koyomi Araragi's character and just what kind of events made him the type of person he was when we first meet him way back at the beginning of this series. It's pretty cool when a brand new character can be introduced that you find so interesting and engaging that even though you know the series is kind of coming to an end shortly, you really hope that you see more of them despite kind of how things seem to be ending. Of course, I say this is the end of the series, but Nishio Ishin, of course, in Japan has gone on to write a bunch of off-season Monogatari books and has been, for the past couple of volumes now, started a new season. However, none of those have been announced yet for English release, and who knows if they will arrive here anytime too soon. But yeah, for now, this volume, definitely a fantastic read. It really seemed to pull more of Nishio Ishin's sort of mystery elements into it, and it was one of those Monogatari volumes where the story did not give in to lots and lots and lots of useless and idle banter. Instead, it was one of those books that really grabbed me right from the start and just held on until the very, very end. In my 9th spot for this year, this book comes to us from J Novel Club, and it is volume number 1 of Deathbound Duke's Daughter. This story is about a woman who dies in modern-day Japan, finds herself reincarnated as the villainess of an otome game. I know you're all kind of like, well, we've heard this one before. And this probably won't be the last time that you hear this. In any case, she finds that she is a younger girl at this point, and she realizes that where she is in terms of the plot line of the game is that she's actually in the pre-game events. So essentially, the game events that she played took place while this character, Erica, was in high school. However, she is actually quite a young child, and she realizes that this is a sort of pivotal moment where she alienates a main character who becomes a problem for her later on down in high school. So it's kind of like avoiding a death flag years in advance. And so, of course, well, I mean, you know, the death flag is right there and starts happening, and of course she has to try and avoid it. What really made this book stand out for me and made its way onto this list is, first of all, the world building and the magic system, which, I mean, we can consider those both world building, but world, because this is not a world like any other typical otome game light novel that we've gotten. It is a world of monsters, vampires, werewolves, vengeful spirits, magic that is old and cursed. It's just such an interesting world with so many different possibilities. The magic system is well developed. In fact, there's 2 magic systems that are going on in this world at the same time. And even the story itself, this sort of main conflict that she finds herself in, revolves around a history that traces all the way back to when the people that she is now a part of first came to this land, like that they first immigrated to. So there's all sorts of world building and there's all sorts of depth to it that you really don't find in a lot of otome-based light novels. But at the same time, it's like this brisk, fun adventure, dungeon diving adventure. It just was a lot of fun and cool, and I'm actually really saddened because there's only another 1 book in this series, and as far as I know, it's on hiatus. I think there was more web novel stuff, but I don't know if it's going to get published or not, so I admit, in my sadness, I have not progressed with the series, but definitely this was one that was a lot of fun and had sort of a different take to that whole otome villainous bad end type thing. My number 8 pick for this year gets another female protagonist. This time, this one comes to us from 7 Seas, and it is Roll Over and Die. There's a very long, like, I will fight with my cursed sword for my true love. Or in any case, we're just going to call it Roll Over and Die because it's way too long to call it anything else. This is a story about a girl who is chosen to join a party of heroes to go out and destroy the Demon Lord, as, you know, happens often in fantasy light novels. Thing is, her stats are atrocious. This girl is like totally dead weight, and pretty much the whole team spends a hell of a lot of time just trying to keep her not dead. So one of them decides he's had enough of this crap, and he sells her into slavery. Yeah, it's pretty harsh. In a moment of absolute despair and in a moment where it is essentially choose how you want to die, she reaches out for a cursed sword and discovers something very unique about herself. In any case, the story continues on with her trying to start a brand new life. Of course, because she has been branded as a slave, she really can do nothing except become an adventurer. And while she does it, she takes this girl that was also a slave along with her, and we have a budding romance between these 2 girls begin at the same time that we have all of this adventure. And quite frankly, a lot of horror and brutal violence. This book really stood out for having this blend of Yuri, fantasy, adventure, horror, violence. Like, it had a lot of elements that I don't know that we would technically always pair together as being natural partners, but it worked so well, and the characters I found so engaging, and the whole setup of the whole situation. It was just a really solid book. One that I admit I held off on because of the nature of, the slavery, potentially torture. Like, I really didn't know just how horrific and uncomfortable this book would be. But in the end, it was a great read, and one that I'm really glad that I kind of waited for a few other people to review, and just to kind of gauge what I might think about it, so that I would check it out. And definitely a really good one that I would like to continue on with, because there's so many mysteries that this book kind of introduces as it goes along that, man, I got so many questions that I really want to have answered. In my seventh spot, this one coming from Yen On, it's volume number 1 of Wandering Witch, The Journey of Elaina. Of course, this one just finished a anime season, which sounds like it was a little bit of a ride for viewers. I did only read the first volume this year. Now, this one, I just really think that I thought a lot about this book because of the variety of the stories in it. If you aren't familiar, basically we have a main character named Elaina, who is a witch. I know, shocking given the title. Who has essentially decided that she's going to journey across the world, and not so much that she's going to try and change the world or make it a better place. She's just going to see what the world has to offer, what the world is. It is a journey, quite literally. And there are lots of times that Elaina gets mixed up into things that she basically just kind of wipes her hands and walks away, because she's like, I did not sign up to fix this. I just am here as a tourist, basically. And while certainly the complaints about Elena's behavior and personality being a little uncomfortable are not completely unwarranted, there were just moments in this book that I really loved, and I liked the variety of the different stories, that some of them were funny, some of them were heartbreaking, some of them were mysterious, some had slight elements of horror to them, that there were moments where you were glad that Elaina was flying away and we would never go back there again, and other moments where you thought to yourself, I really hope she comes back at some point, even though you know she probably won't. There were a lot of cool things in this book, and it made me want to journey this world with her, and I find that myself, I really didn't care too much that we didn't solve the problems of the world, that, she's not some kind of like Jesus-kun delivering divine saving into everybody. That in a lot of ways she is a little bit of a stuck-up snob, that she is egocentric, and that really she's just dedicated to what she wants to do, and people going to live their lives, and she doesn't need to interfere. It was just such a kind of different take on things, but one that I found I really enjoyed. In my number 6 spot, this one coming from 7 Seas, and perhaps it's a bit of a cheat because I did read it during 2020, but I've yet to actually post my review on it, so if you're watching this video, it's a little bit of a spoiler, obviously, but that is volume number 1 of I'm in Love with the Villainous. This one is a female who dies in Japan and is reborn in an otome game, but she's reborn as the actual heroine of the otome game. Again, I know, not super different. However, here's the thing. She has no interest in the actual suitors from the game. Instead, she is in love with the villainous character. There is a lot to kind of unpack in this book, and I'm not going to get all into it because I'm doing a full review very soon, probably in the next week or so. But I just think that I want to say about this one is that I liked the fact that we had a main character who, and I'll get more into my review, but we had a main character who knew where the world was going, and there's all these cues that she's planning for it. and that she is trying in a way to prepare the villainous, because let's face it, in otome games, villainesses don't usually meet good ends. And it seems that she's trying to prep and lay the groundwork to make sure that they can get through it. Because, let's face it again, otome villainesses don't always get through, if you know what I mean. I liked the fact that it felt like the world was changing, that it didn't feel like the conflict in this book was just a one-off thing, that we all just solved it and went happily on our way. You feel like there is a powder keg building in this world that's about to pop. And that is something that I know in talking to some other reviewers that they also found kind of refreshing, especially in an otome type book. In any case, I'm not going to get much deeper into this because I've got a full review that's going to be coming out for it, and let's face it, this video is going to be long enough as it is. Number 5, coming to us from Yen On. This one really kind of hit home in terms of, damn, I wish somebody had said this to me back in high school. That's going to be volume number 1 of bottom tier character Tomozaki. Now, funny enough, this just premiered its first episode, an anime, and it's pretty clear that those of us who read the book kind of have a different sense of what this is all about than people who have only watched the anime. And that is fair, because obviously the first book covers a lot more than what the first volume of the anime does. But essentially, this is the story of Tomozaki, who is a phenomenal gamer, but who puts no effort into life. And mainly because he feels that life is like a crappy game, that it's rigged, there's no rules that you can run by, all sorts of people are born with cheats and advantages that, puts them ahead of other people that no amount of work will ever compensate for. And he meets this girl who essentially tells him, you're wrong. There are ways that you can play this as a game. There are ways that even if you weren't born super hot or super rich or whatever, that you can put efforts in that will at least improve your life. And the sense that I got from this book isn't that it is, let us homogenize everyone. Let us make everybody not be different. Because in fact, as the book goes on, you start to see where Tomozaki, there's things that he knows because of his gaming that he starts applying to real life and helping other people. And it shows that you can still love the things you love and not lose yourself, but yet you can also put a bit of work in to become part of the world. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like this character is being shown a path to his full potential instead of allowing him to just give in to apathy and depression and to just fall away. In some ways, it's not, like I said, it's not about sort of converting a character. It's about saving someone. It's about helping someone find potential and hope and joy. And in the end, he can walk away. There's no gun to his head. This isn't a situation where it's like somebody says, oh, if you don't do this, you'll never be able to do that, or you'll never be, you know what I mean? And so much of it just seemed like such a logical thing. And as I said, there were a number of times that I read the book and I thought to myself, wow, if this was the kind of stuff that somebody had said to you back in the day, the little changes that you could have made that could have long-term made such big changes. It really kind of hit me, this was just one of those books that I kind of thought, oh, they're going to apply the whole gaming philosophy to how you get through life, but it just seemed a little deeper than that. And I don't want to give away too much of it, obviously, but the more that you discover about the main female character, it sheds a whole different kind of light on things as well. So If you've only watched the anime and you kind of got a weird feeling off of it and you thought, oh my god, this is just about trying to turn a gamer into a non-otaku or whatever, don't stress out about that. That is not what I think this book is all about at all. Give it some time, or, even better, go pick up the light novel. At my number 4 spot for this year, this one coming from Yen On, it's a book about boy meets girl, girl in a bunny suit. This one is volume number 1 of Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. Now, this story has these two characters, the boy Sakuta and the girl Mai, who meet in the library when Mai's walking around in a bunny girl outfit. And the reason she's doing that is because she's disappearing. People just don't seem to notice her. So she decides, I'm going to wear the most outlandish outfit possible because there is no way that people are going to ignore me if I'm wearing this. In Sakuta's case, it turns out to be absolutely true, but he's the only one. And so the book progresses with the two of them trying to figure out just what is happening to Mai and why it is that she's increasingly sort of disappearing from reality. This is one of those books that has a great blend of romance, a great blend of characters that you're interested in and that you enjoy seeing together and interacting together. And even though it has kind of a pseudo-science-y, paranormal-ish type bent to it, the themes and ideas behind that and the meanings behind it are very real. And all of these elements combine to make this book that I couldn't put down, and I just found myself rooting for these two characters in ways that I often don't for light novel characters. I'm not one of those mad shipper type readers, but man, I ship these two like all day, every day. So, so to me, this was just a really great blend of all sorts of elements of like that slice of life. There's all sorts of sort of mystery to it, and there are other mysteries that are introduced throughout the story that they don't answer because, of course, it's an ongoing series. But all of it just kept me so engaged, and I wanted to know about the characters and even the side characters and secondary characters. I was kind of like, I know you're going to get featured more in later books. I look forward to that, honestly, because most of them, I really liked them as well. So if you're looking for a book that is a really cool sort of romance, slice of life, but also has this sort of deeper paranormal, but the paranormal stuff is more of a commentary on us as people, then this is a definite title to check out. And I mean, honestly, I probably don't need to preach about this one to a lot of you because the anime was wildly popular, and I'm pretty sure most of you have already checked this book out if you're into light novels and you've either read, either watched or heard about the anime. At my number 3 spot, this one coming from J Novel Club, and it is a series that has had wide acclaim, and it's pretty obvious why. And I think, honestly, this would have been higher on my list if I had read more of it, because this is one of those books where volume 1 is like part 1 of the story. Like, basically, book 1 is only a third of book 1. Does that make sense? Because that's kind of how it feels. But in any case, I'm talking about volume number 1 of Ascendance of a Bookworm. This one features our main character, Mine, who comes to realize that she is actually the reincarnation, it's complicated, of a girl from Japan who was absolutely in love with books, loved books so much, and ironically died because of books. That again, check the book. In any case, she has been reborn into a world where books are an extravagant luxury, and most people are illiterate. But she's like, how do I survive without books? And so the main driving force behind her in this book is literally how to create a book, which is a very different take on the whole isekai, where typically we're out to kill the demon lord or save the world or whatever the hell we do, but we're not usually like making a big thing about trying to make a book. But this works. It is a really great slice of life type story. And there is, man, like I said, there's this first book. I liked it. It was cool. I liked how different it was because of the goal of what mine was trying to do. But the thing about it, and this is why, like I said, I think it would have been higher if I had at least read the other two of volume 1. It gets to the end, and oh my gosh, there's like this sort of thing that happens at the end of book 1 that just makes you kind of reflect on what's happened throughout the book and see things in a very different way. And it just shows you just how well written the book is, that it's been able to tease all these things, but you didn't really see it. You might have even a little suspected it, but you never really knew. And then you get to the end and you're like, holy crap. Like, not a lot of books can do that and pull it off, and pull it off really well. In fact, funny enough, my book number 2 does that, and we'll talk about that in a second. In any case, it was just, and like, you've got this character who is a really engaging character because she's not perfect. In fact, in a lot of ways, she's kind of selfish because, like, she's just driven to try and do her thing and accomplish her goal. But it is still, she is like a likable character because she's still willing and able to help people along the way. Yes, in a lot of cases, she's doing it because she figures it's a way to try and move forward with her goals, but still, there's a lot of really heartwarming elements in this book. As I said, there's a lot of mysteries that you don't even really quite realize are mysteries until near the end. Overall, just an excellently written book. A story that, again, is very different from so many other isekais that are out there. And a series that I know from people who have watched the anime adaptation, which obviously has gone much further than I've read, people who have read much further than I have read, that this continues to be an amazing series. In fact, that it by the sounds of it, only gets better as it goes along. So definitely one of those series that I want to try and find time to read more of. At the very least, finish volume 1, because I've only read part 1 of 3. And as I said, it really feels like you've only read like a third of the book, even though a lot happens. But there's just so much setup and stuff going on. But yeah, definitely this was a really strong book, and I just so well written, and the characters so well formed and everything else. And like I said, technically it's only a third of the first volume. At my number 2 spot, and this one coming from Yen On, this book really grabbed me because of its world building, its magic, its characters, its mysteries. I'm talking about Reign of the Seven Spellblades, and this is volume number 1 of that series, a relatively newer book. I just did my review not long ago on this one. This is one of those books where you can tell the author is an experienced writer, that they have already done a long series. Because unlike so many other light novels that we have that are very episodic and you just kind of have the book moving from piece to piece to piece, and again, that's not a bad thing, but it is kind of nice sometimes to read a book where you feel like the author has really intentionally constructed every event to happen in a specific way at a specific time, because there's payoffs as you go along. Not to mention that of a lot of the books that I read this year, this one's pace was one of those things that it was so fast and there was always something happening that just drew you in and that you just wanted to keep reading. And yet it wasn't like that was all just fluff, It wasn't that it was all just pure action and that kind of stuff. Like, like there was a lot going on in this book, and as I said, a lot of things that world building wise I thought were so cool. Like this is probably one of the few light novels, aside from say, Deathbound Duke's Daughter, where the setting, the world, was just as important to me and just as inspiring and interesting to me as a lot of the other things going on, like the characters and plot, Uh, just wanting to delve into that world and find out the mysteries about it. That was just as much of a thing for me as what was going on with the characters and the mysteries and things and everything else that they get involved in. I also really enjoyed that we had these characters that were all just archetypal enough that it was easy to tell them apart, and yet they all had these cool and interesting little twists to them that really made them cemented in your brain. And as I said with Ascendance of a Bookworm, this one gets to an epilogue that just kind of turns everything on its head. And not in a bad way, because it turns it on its head in a way that makes sense. It might surprise you, or you might see it coming, or at least have some suspicions of it coming. But yeah, wow. This was just one of those books that just really, I thought to myself, as soon as I put it down, I want to read more. And honestly, as much as I enjoy light novels, as much as I enjoyed all the light novels that I've talked about on this list, a lot of them I was okay putting it down and saying, okay, well, I'll read something else for now. But this one, I was just, man, I wanted to know. I'm like, where do we go next? Like, at the very least, I wanted to read what the next book was after that epilogue. And as I said, for a book to do that for me, yeah, that's a big thing for me. And for a book that makes me that interested in the characters and the setting right away, yeah, this was a big title for me this year, and one that I really enjoyed. And I know it's not going to be for everybody. And funny enough, I know, like, after I posted the video, my review of it, where I gushed like hell over it, some people were like, I don't get the hype. I didn't, it wasn't, I didn't think it was all that. And that's cool. But, for me, I really loved this book. It was just, maybe it's because, wizards and swords and monsters and demons and schools that are dangerous, and it just hit a lot of hot buttons that I'm into, like that. I think that's kind of one of those things where this is one of those books where if you're a certain type of reader, you're just going to be so into that book, and the rest of you, I don't know, man, but I still think it's worth reading. I still think that it is well written, which, I mean, if we're being fair, we can't always say that about light novels, but definitely this was like a really high point for me for the year, but not high enough to be my number one pick. So now we come to the last book in this list, my favorite book of 2020. The book that honestly I have continued to talk about and gush about and recommend to people, and that is one of those titles that I have yet to meet anyone who has read it that hasn't thought highly of it. And this one comes to us from J Novel Club, and that is Tearmoon Empire, volume number 1. The story of Princess Mia, who is being escorted to the gallows, and as the guillotine comes flying down and cuts her head off, she wakes up, and it is years earlier. And at first, she's tempted to say, like, that was just a dream. Like, there's no way all that happened. But she discovers a bloody diary covered in her blood that's filled in with all of the events that she lived through that she thought were just a dream. And so she sets out to ensure that she doesn't end up going to the guillotine again. She decides that she's going to save her empire and prevent the anger and the hatred that made her die. Tearmoon Empire is one of those books that combines all sorts of great elements and does them in a spectacular way that feels balanced and fun. And it's one of those books that there's enough meaty stuff for you to think about and to enjoy, but at the same time, there's enough fluffy stuff for you to laugh at and have fun with at the same time. First off, the character of Mia is what really makes this book. Because Mia is a character that you love, even though she's not perfect. She makes mistakes. She can be selfish. She can be ignorant. But she's trying so hard not to be. She's trying so hard to be a better person and to make better decisions and make better choices. And even though there's lots of times where she's a little flighty, she's not stupid. There's one point in the book, which I won't spoil, I'll try and talk around it, but basically, she finds out a piece of information that most people, if they were really, hoity-toity and everything else, would just fly off the handle in anger. But Mia actually stops to think, and she's like, holy crap, this is huge. This could be a huge point of saving the Empire. And it's her ability to come up with those ideas, her ability to recognize those moments and those events that makes her a good character, a character that you can root for because, again, sometimes she falls down, sometimes she makes stupid mistakes. Other times, though, she's a smart lady. She's not stupid. I also really loved that things that she did out of pure altruism. There's a maid that when Mia is locked up for years before she goes to the guillotine, there's one maid who still tends to her, that who comes down and washes her, feeds her, tells her stories. And when Mia encounters her in this new timeline, she immediately is like, you're going to be my maid. You are like my personal maid. I don't want anybody else. Even though this girl is seen by most people as like she's a lord, she's a commoner, she's not the greatest maid of all time, but Mia is like, you know what? You deserve a reward for what you did for me. And this is in Mia's head, because of course nobody knows. But you deserve a reward for what you did for me, and you are the kind of person that should be near me. Someone who is that I can trust and that I know is a good person. And what I love about this book is that that decision pays dividends to Mia all the way throughout the book. There's never a time really that making that girl her maid doesn't turn out to be a really big win for Mia. And I loved that that was sort of, those domino effects continued. It wasn't like I did one good thing and then we just leave it behind and you just become a character in the background. No, like all these secondary characters play a big role in the book, and they are all really fun and interesting characters. And I find myself rooting for a lot of them too. There's this sort of cute romance that starts developing. There's just all these different elements that I loved so much. And even the narrator, who sometimes can be really hard on me, and maybe a little more than he needs to be, but overall, that narrator's voice just added on to the fun of the book. Just kind of snarky side comments and stuff. Like you have to read it to really get the sense of what it is. But this is a narrator that obviously is seeing events and making their own decisions about what they really mean and what's really going on and making their own judgment calls. And some of them are really entertaining. Overall, Tearmoon Empire is just one of those light novels that, yeah, sure, it's not going to be for everybody. It's not full of slam and action and stuff. In fact, it's one of those light novels that has no magic in it, which is really interesting. But what's funny is that despite all of the fantasy light novels and everything else that I have read that have magic, I never missed it once in this book. The only magic that happens in this book is whatever made Mia go back in time. That's it. There's no other magic. And you know what? Like I said, you don't miss it because there's just so many other things going on that keep you engaged. And this was just one of those books that every bit that you read was a reward, and finishing it just it just felt overwhelmingly positive. This is just one of those books that if you like it, if you get into it, I'm sure you'll find that you love it. And it's well written, it's well constructed with great characters. And like I said, it is just one of those titles that even though I read it a while ago, I keep coming back to it. I keep telling people you should check out Tearmoon Empire. Oh, Tearmoon Empire is just a great balance in terms of all sorts of different elements that, it is just, I'm gushing, I'm gushing again about it, but absolutely this was bar none the book that I think, when I think about the books that I have spoken about the most, that I've given the most praise to all year long, Tearmoon Empire, there was just no question that this was my top read of 2020. And again, a series that I have already fallen at least 2 to 3 volumes behind. But definitely that I do want to get back to. I keep saying this about so many series, and I keep trying to figure out a way that I can power through. I gotta find a way to read faster. That's my problem. I gotta read faster. So those are my top 10 light novels for 2020. What were your top reads this year? You got the comments down below. Hit me with it. You don't have to do a 10. You do your top 3 or top 2. Just heck, what was your favorite book this year that you read that you absolutely loved and were so happy that you got a chance to check out? So if you want to check out all my reviews on these top 10 books, I'll put a playlist right here. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me in this video, and I hope that you've hit that subscribe and like, and I can see you in one of my future ones. Till then, bye-bye for now.